Hey everybody, we are on screen, off screen, and we are doing our top 10 games this week. This whole series is about getting to know us, some of our favorite things, some things that we don't like, and hopefully we'll get to know you too, interact with us, leave comments, all that kind of thing. Let's start with your 10 through 6, Josh.
Uh, we're doing top 10 games,
Did
video
I say,
games.
what did I say?
You didn't say anything about it.
I said top 10 games, literally just barely.
Okay. Um, all right. My number 10 is Dishonored, the first one. My number 9, asterisk with this one, Star Citizen. Uh, Asterisk because the game isn't out and very big recency bias with CitizenCon this weekend. Uh, Number 8, Total War Warhammer. I'm including the whole series because the third one includes the second and first content for the most part. Number 7, Age of Empires 2 with the expansions. I like the remaster that they did just a few years ago. And my number 6 is Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay, solid list. I am a big fan of Dishonored. I think I'm even the one who told you to play that game. I wouldn't have put it in my top 10. What made that one stand out to you that highly?
It's a game that I was able to just dive into. Not many games kind of just like capture you the way that like Baldur's Gate 3, Dishonored do, um, in terms of their story and everything else. It's not a very long game. Most of the puzzles are pretty easy without even knowing there was other endings. I got the good ending. You didn't even really have to try that hard for it, but it made you think. The story was engaging and just kind of brings you into that world uh, super easily. And so that's why it made my number 10 over so many great games.
Uh, Me and Josh talk games all the time, and he's played more than I have. I enjoy games. I've played them a lot. Josh and me share Steam, and like half of the games, more than half of the games on there are from him that I've been able to play. Dishonored is really good, and like you said, it sucks you in. But was it the gameplay that sucked you in? You said you really liked the story. What about the story? What about the gameplay was so great?
um, it's really hard to identify. Some games you just kind of click with, some
Okay,
games you just don't. I am not a Bioshock fan. Everybody loves Bioshock. I don't enjoy Bioshock at all. Um,
okay.
I wouldn't even say I liked Bioshock. There are things about it that make me understand why people like it, but it's not a top game for me. Has a lot to be left to be desired, in my opinion, when it comes to that game. Um, but Dishonored, for whatever reason, just captured me with its story. Its gameplay is good, but it's a little dated. Um, just a little bit. It's still definitely playable. It's not like Assassin's Creed 1 that's just terrible. Um, but yeah, it's just for whatever reason that story just grabbed me from the very beginning. Played through it super fast, and immediately wanted to jump into the second one and did. Um, didn't have to wait or hold off. I played both of them later, so I was able to binge through both of them back to back. Um, but yeah, Dishonored 2 would be a top 15 game for me too, just slightly losing out to Dishonored 1.
Wow, wow. Dishonored 2 was a big jump down for me, and I think it's cool that you like Dishonored as much as you did. I like Bioshock. I think it's a good game, and I can see how it influenced so many other games, including Dishonored. I think there's a similar vibe shared between the two games. Dishonored did have something special to it. It was just it was a unique game, and it really made you feel like a badass
I mean,
in a way
or
that a lot of
yeah,
other games just
yeah.
don't.
And the second one I agree was a step down. And honestly, if the time travel section of the game wasn't in it, it would be far, far, far down the list. But that is
Okay.
one of the greatest sections of gaming of all time.
It's super cool.
Yeah. So because that kind of redeems it, it does lift it back up to a top spot. And I'm glad that I played it. It was a good game. Yeah, I still think it was a good story. I liked the new powers and new character. Um, I was not intrigued enough to want to try it again with the original character, so I've only played it with the new character. Um, but still a great game. Both of them, one and two, fantastic, amazing games.
Did you try the third one? Have you played
No,
it yet? Okay. I don't like the third one quite as much, but the first two are really good. Your next one was Star Citizen. I have played it very, very little. I bet a lot of people don't even know what it really is. Can
I
you
didn't even know
explain a little
you've
bit?
played it at all.
Very, very little. I tried it a little bit. I might hop on with you again sometime and try it some more. I don't know. Um, Tell people a little bit about what it is and why you like it so much.
It's Spaceship Simulator. There's not really much more to say about it. You have right now just one system, Stanton. You go to the planets, seamless transitioning from space to the planet's surface. Um, this game is a little bit unique in its purchasing model. Um, you don't buy a $70 game, you buy a $40 to $3,000 ship, and uh, get into it. And you could be a bounty hunter, or a mercenary, or a pirate, or a miner, or a hauler, or whatever, an engineer, or whatever you want to do, farmer. You can do. They just had CitizenCon where they announced their plan for the next 12 to 18 months. And um, it's still in alpha. Full disclosure, people, it's still in alpha. It's still very buggy. It's not a seamless experience. You hop into it, you can have crashes, you can have drops in frame rates quite often. Um, when you're traveling through space, everybody needs to be in a seat because it is not impossible for people to glitch out of the ship when in movement. So it's still got a lot to work on. Um, but they did announce a lot of stuff that I'm very excited for coming up with it. And it's got a campaign, Squadron 42, which looks phenomenal and has an extremely great cast supporting it. Um, but yeah, that's Star Citizen, just in a couple of sentences.
So I knew that Star Citizen had raised a bunch of money, but I just looked it up, and as of June 2nd, it's raised $700 million.
Yeah,
What about this game do you think is captivating enough to make that kind of money? That's a lot of money.
that's a ton of money. That is the largest crowd-funded video game project of all time. Um, it is just, I think a lot of people are buying into the vision that this could be. Um, a lot of people are really invested in the idea of having your own ships and going out and traveling into space and exploring. They right now only have one system. Over the next 18 months, they plan to add four more um, with an eventual end goal of about 100, all with their own planets and moons and space stations and whatever. You can build your own space stations, or you will be able to. That's another thing announced. but um, just the idea of, you know, it's kind of like as if, like, why do people love Farming Simulator? Why do people love Animal Crossing? Why do people love Stardew Valley? It's kind of like this mesh of that kind of game plus an MMORPG, um, all kind of wrapped into one big package to give people. And a lot of people criticize its um, purchasing model in the fact that you buy a ship to play with in the game. But I think that there's just pros and cons with that. I think the pro is that not everybody has to, like, if you were to buy a different game, right? You're going to spend $70 on the game, and then I want to play with Konlin, so Konlin has to spend $70 on that game, and then you're both starting in what would be like your starter ship, right? You're going to be very limited. You're going to have to progress through the game to try all the different aspects and to get into crafting and this, that, and the other. Um, but with Star Citizen, I can spend the $3,000 on the biggest, baddest ship in the game, and you can spend $40. And then because we both have access to the game at this point, we can both hop in and play in the biggest, baddest ship, you know? Uh, and I mean, like, it is pros and cons. Most ships are available for in-game purchases. You earn in-game currency. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. There, you can even build. Well, you will be able to build your own ships up to those capital class ships. So there's nothing stopping you from just spending $40 and getting into it and having access to everything. There's nothing behind a paywall. There's nothing behind a story wall. There's nothing stopping you from the big problem with MMOs is they start you really easy and you're kind of locked to an area and to a certain set of things that you can do. Star Citizen is limitless. You can jump in at any moment, at any point in time, and go out and do whatever you want to do. Um, and they've put a lot of work into it, and it's a great project and a great vision, and it's really cool to be part of the group that is seeing the development actually happen. You know, we get this finished product with most games finished, and because it's an alpha, I get to hop in and I get to be a part of that development and actually watch how this game progresses through its development, which is really cool.
That is really cool. Do you, as somebody in alpha, give them notes on bug fixes, that kind of thing?
Just the automatic reports that my computer does and sends
Cool.
off, which is only happening when there's crashes or problems that come up. So, and then, like, they know the specs of my PC, and that's about it.
Nice. It's one I should try more. It is interesting to me. I like the path that they're going. I think there's a lot of potential. You showed me that video with those players that are breaking out of prison, and that's just so freaking cool. Um,
And it's all self done, right? Like, there's no storyline or plot that they're playing through. They just got their buddies together and decided to try and break out of prison, and that's just so cool. You make your own stories and your own paths and have your own little adventures. And one of the things they announced was more structure. They're going to give a main story that gets people introduced to all the different aspects of the game, from mining to hauling to bounty hunting to being a mercenary to doing all of those things, which I think is really great. But it is those moments where I'm mining with a couple of friends in our big mining ship out in the middle of space. And one of us overcooks the mine just a little bit too much and causes it to explode. And then my character is dying and the rest of them were killed, and so I'm rushing to try and save them with the limited medical supplies we brought on board with the ship, or we're all rushing back to try and recover our stuff, or whatever it may be. Eventually it's going to be to the point where my group is out mining, right? And we're just doing our thing and we're chatting, we're having a good time. And Konlin decides, hey, I want their stuff. So I'm going to sit in my stealth ship until they build up enough for me to just grab and go. And then I'm going to go blow up their engines, steal their stuff, and then leave them there. Or kill them and then leave them there. Or board their ship and steal their ship, or whatever it may be. Um, so it's just very, very cool, very, very big, and just so much fun to hop in with your buddies and play, and doesn't have the downsides to MMO RPGs that I traditionally don't like those kinds of games. Um, I do also want to note there is a downside to where this game is going, um, and that is that they're planning to implement like engineering on the ship and repairs on the ship and that kind of stuff. And like, I don't want to have to be like, okay, I need to get from point A to point B. I'm gonna fly there. Oh, my engine failed. Now I'm floating out in the middle of space. I'm gonna have to get out of the chair, cross the ship, maybe even go outside the ship, perform this repair. However, they make that happen. In most games, it's like do this quick puzzle thing, right? I'm not really into that kind of stuff. I'd rather just get from point A to point B. But they are planning on that kind of level of detail. So pros and cons with it for sure. But right
Yeah.
now,
A,
number 9 for me.
cool. A lot of people will love that intricate stuff. It's not my thing either, but hopefully they can implement it well.
It
Total
can be
War.
fun, right? Like if you and I are playing together and you love doing the engineering, repair it guy thing, and I like doing whatever, we can still play together, which is really cool. Um,
It is.
but like if it's just me and I'm playing alone, then it's a chore. It's in the way. It's not doing anything to improve my experience.
As of right now, is there any plans to be able to, I don't know, hire an NPC or have an NPC character with you that you could have be the engineer for your ship? Kind of an idea?
Yes, so long as your ship has the capabilities of having NPCs on board,
Okay, cool. That's
right?
very cool.
So that means they have to have like I think it means they have to have living quarters on the ship, right? Like you have to have a certain number of beds per ship. Otherwise, you can't. And like some ships don't have any beds.
So
So
just have to have enough of a carrier. That's cool.
yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, you should be able to hire AIs and NPCs and that kind of stuff to operate that. Whether it's doing the engineering, refining, mining, operating a turret, whatever. They have tiers. Like you could hire an AI to do it, which is going to do the bare minimum kind of skill of operating that turret, right? And then you could hire an NPC, which is going to be more expensive, but they'll be better than the AI, or you can have an actual player do it.
Very cool. It sounds like a very interesting game to me. Your number 8 is Total War. Those games are fantastic. They're just a good strategy game. And then you have AOE 2. I also love AOE 2. Actually, yeah, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic game. What about AOE 2 versus all the other real-time strategy games? There's a ton of them.
There is a ton of them. There's only like 3 good ones, right? You have StarCraft, Warcraft, and Age of Empires 2. Age of Empires 1 and 3 are terrible. Um, Total War Warhammer has a real time strategy elements, but it's kind of like that mixed with the civilization type game. Uh, AoE2 is the LAN party experience I grew up with. Um, I had a group of neighborhood friends. We would all hop on and play Age of Empires 2 together, or we would system link and play Halo 2 together. Um, so it's just that experience of growing up and playing those games, and we still do it from time to time. And we've brought like you into that group and a couple of other people into that group. Um, I am not good at that game by any stretch of the meaning. Um, if I tried playing online, I would lose to everyone, every single person that plays online. I would lose to. But it is that group of us getting together every once in a while, having a pizza, having some Mountain Dew, some Dr. Pepper, whatever it may be, uh, and playing until 2 o'clock in the morning in the same room. And it still supports LAN, which not a lot of games do, which is great. I think that like StarCraft 1 and 2 are better RTSs. I They have campaigns that are interesting enough to play through and cinematics that are out of this world. They're phenomenal. But I didn't have that same experience. I did play StarCraft 1 from time to time with one of my friends. We would actually play free for all, and I would be Terran and set up my siege tanks behind his um, burrowing Zerg, and we would go and cheese some people online and piss them off, which was a great time. Um, but that's not the same experience as I had with Age of Empires, so that's why that one gets that placement. It's because of everything outside of that game that impacts that game.
That makes sense. It's a fantastic game. Well, we have a couple friends that still play this online regularly, and it's when did this come out? 90
1999.
99, and people are still playing it online. They'll have I don't really like watching e-gaming that much except for some reason AoE 2.
Oh, I
Maybe it's
hate
because I've
watching it
played it
online.
enough. What?
I hate watching it online.
I think it's crazy. I watch them and I just marvel at how freaking fast they are. It is astounding to me that they can do what they can do.
Yep.
Your number 6 is Baldur's Gate 3. I knew this was going to be on the list. This deserves to be on the list. This game is freaking phenomenal. I honestly thought it was going to be higher. We'll get into your higher ranked games later, but what made this one number 6 instead of going up a little bit?
If I would have made this list when the game came out, it definitely would have been higher. Um, but the fact that I've cooled off on the game, I don't even have it installed on my system anymore, is why. Um, I love the game. I'm excited to get back into it. I'm excited to keep playing my, evil playthrough. I'm excited to do all of those things. And you and I have had fun playing through Act One. Um, it's definitely got a lot of replayability to it. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the fact that like NCAA football 25 came out and I was instantly like, I'll get to it when I get to it, is why it kind of dropped down from there. Um, but if I was making this list because of recency bias, I would have put it probably at like 2 because I was really into it. Um, but yeah, that's why it dropped down that much. Still love it. Still a fantastic game. Phenomenal story. Gameplay's great. Love, 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 love just about everything about it. Uh, it just has a couple of. I mean, like, my only complaint about Baldur's Gate 3 is how long some of those turns can take.
That's fair.
Like that's it. That's my only complaint. So
Me too. I think it's damn near a perfect game. It's insane what they were able to pull off with that.
I absolutely. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do next. They canceled the DLC. They've announced they're not doing a Baldur's Gate 4. Uh, so I'm guessing it's going to be Divinity Original Sin 3, just based on the fact that that's not a D&D licensed game.
From what
Uh,
I've heard, they actually want to do something new. Like,
I know, but new is relative, right? Like they could still do
that's true.
Divinity Original Sin 3 and just do it in a different way because I think there's some flaws with the mechanics of Original Sin 2. Um, but yeah, well, that's that. Why don't you go ahead and give your 10 through 6?
Number 10 is Grim Dawn. Number 9 is Slay the Spire. Number 8 is Alien Isolation. Number 7 is Civ 4. And number 6 for me is also Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay. So I want to start with Slay the Spire. You
Okay.
have put thousands, not even kidding, over 1,000 hours into this one game that is
Yeah.
mediocre. How does it fall so low on your list? I thought this would be like number 3. If I were to do a predictive list for you, I would have put it way high up there.
I love Slay the Spire and I love the mods of Slay the Spire. The original game, I enjoy everything about it. It is my pass the time game. It is my I'll do Steam Link from my phone and I'll just play it on my phone while we're watching something. I enjoy the crap out of this game. And then you add the mods to it, and people have come up with some very creative mods and creative deck types that add a lot of variety to this game. So to me, it's endlessly playable. I can just add another mod and I have a good time with it. People think about how these deck types should go together. I love the aspect of it that's more of a roguelike where you're trying to get further and further and further. And sometimes you're having bad luck and sometimes you're having good luck. And you get to choose how you use that luck. You get to go through these different deck types, and with what you're dealt, you get to push forward or draw back. I haven't played Magic in a really long time, but when I did play Magic, I loved I can't even remember what it's called anymore, but where you would have a bunch of deck packs and you would draw one card, you would take one card from your deck pack and you would switch and you would move the deck pack to your left or to your right. You would take one
Draft.
card, yeah, draft. I loved doing that version. It was a ton of fun to me. I would go to a game store basically every week, and I played Yu-Gi-Oh before that. Um, and we would do the exact same thing. And I've always had a really good time with that. And it was like that on Infinite. And I got to experience different play styles. I got to play around with those play styles and see if I could fine tune them. It was like I'm not a tinker guy. Like I've never really liked Legos and that kind of thing. It's just never been my thing. It's like my tinkering, and I loved doing it, and I could just do it for hours upon hours upon hours because legitimately I've put a ridiculous amount of time into this game,
Yeah,
but I
your
have so much fun
playtime
with
is
it.
over 1,000 hours. So why is it so low? Why is Alien Isolation, Civ 4, and Baldur's Gate 3 all higher than a game that you have literally put over 1,000 hours into?
Because Slay the Spire is one that I can just play in my pastime, and these other ones were experiences that required every aspect of me to be inside of that game. So when I was looking at the list, I really considered putting it higher, to be completely honest. But because it is more of a passive game, these other games are more fundamental to who I am, fundamental to what I enjoy, fundamental to what makes me me, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about Grim Dawn for a second.
Okay.
Let's be honest here. Diablo is the far more popular franchise in that style of game. Not even close.
Not
Um,
close at all.
what to you makes Grim Dawn better than the rest? What makes it better than Diablo, Titan Quest, Paths of Exile, and the rest of them?
So I haven't played Paths of Exile yet. I've heard insanely good things. It is one that I would like to play with you at some point, or maybe just Paths of Exile 2 when it comes out, I believe next month. Um, as far as what I have played, I really like Diablo. I even like Diablo 3, but I love Diablo 2. I think it's a great game. I love Titan Quest. Um, I love Planes of Torment. Those kind of games are really, really good. Grim Dawn does a really good job of balancing power levels along with having a very interesting story and a really good feeling as you play it, which draws you into the game. I like the balance of the two different class systems that they kind of introduced in Titan Quest, and then these creators left Titan Quest, built their own company, and made Grim Dawn. I think it's more balanced. I think the different classes are more unique. I like I said, I like the storylines and the way that the aspects of the story unfold upon themselves. I like the DLCs and how they add to the lore of the universe that you're taking part in. To me, everything about it is just good. Like there's nothing about it that I don't like. There's no slow aspects to it. There's no real weak aspects to it. I just like all of it. And I also like that no matter how much I tinkered with these different characters, the level of difficulty was still there. There's a challenge at the very end of the last expansion, and my character is pretty freaking nasty. And beating that last challenge was one of the hardest things I have ever done in video games. And I have tinkered with that character. I have played with it. I have messed with it. It is not a character I've seen on any of these character creation lists. It's very different. It's very powerful, and that was still such a struggle. And I love the fact that it has that kind of difficulty scaling, but you can still enjoy it as somebody who's a newbie. You can still get the concepts of it. There's nothing about it that just feels tricky and like you have to jump through hoops or anything, which I've heard is the main problem with Path of Exile, is that sometimes it gets too complicated. Here, you can truly understand it, but there's a lot of depth still there.
That's fair. Um, I think I've told you this before, but Grim Dawn is also my favorite of those games. They're not really my type of game. None of my top 10 list is any of those games. Um, but to me, the thing that sets it apart is just that feeling of, oh, I can do this and I combine this and this. And what if I did this class with this subclass, you know? Um, and there's just tons of variability to it. Whereas stuff like Diablo is far more limited. You've got 6 classes to choose from. Um, but yeah, let's go. Keep going down this list. Alien Isolation. What to you puts this in your top 10? There are so many fantastic horror games out there, and there are so many in my opinion, are better at being horror. Where's this land? How's this land on number 8 for you? Um,
So I thought about this one a lot too. There's a lot of horror games that I love. I like horror in general, and horror movies don't really scare me. I really enjoy them, but they don't inspire fear in me. For some reason, horror movies don't inspire fear in me. Horror games do. With a horror game, I feel like I get more zoned into the experience, and the actual danger of the game translates more to me as a person, and so I get more tense. And there is no game ever that has made me feel more absolute fear than Alien Isolation. Um, when I first played that game, it literally just scared the crap out of me. There's also the fact that I really like the movies. I even like some of the bad movies. I enjoy this universe. So you have a creature that is hunting you, and if you've got a pair of headphones on, you can like hear it crawling in the vents. It's creepy as hell. And you have these robots that are on board that add a dichotomy between the monsters that I really really like. I like the puzzle system for the map design and how you're trying to get from point A to point B and what the puzzle is involved in that. I enjoy the music immensely. I think the music in this game is fantastic. And I'm so excited that they're coming out with an Alien Isolation 2. I am so pumped. Um, it's it was a very unique experience for me. You've got a game like Outlast. I think Outlast would probably be my second favorite horror game. It it had me on edge. It scared me. It was terrifying. Or you got like Soma. There's a lot of really good horror games out there, but there's nothing that has stuck with me like the first time I played Alien Isolation.
That's fair. What do you think the weaknesses of Alien Isolation are?
Formulaic. I think that's the problem with most horror games is you get to where the formula just kind of repeats itself. And for Outlast, that was one of my problems is I got to where the formula wasn't working on me anymore. So you don't really have that fear response anymore because you just, oh, run here, run here, run here, run here. There's also a part in Alien Isolation where you develop enough technology that you have access to fire, and then the alien, you have a way to get the alien to go away. So this constant dread of, oh, I can't even screw up because if I screw up at all, I'm dead, isn't there as much anymore because you have a way out. And I find that end part of the game actually not as satisfying of because of this lack of dread.
That's fair. Horror's not really my thing. Um, I've not the movies don't scare me, shows don't scare me, games don't even scare me. Um, to me, it is a sign of an incredible horror thing when it's interesting enough for me to just keep watching it all. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, there is this YouTuber, the Stellar J. He has a fantastic video talking about why horror games do get too formulaic. Um, so if anybody wants to watch it, go watch it. It's a great video. Talks about the state of indie horror games and also has another video of ranking his favorite horror games and talks about why. And he does talk about that too. Um, but yeah, for me, I don't I don't love a horror game enough to consider it a favorite horror game because they all kind of just get formulaic. Outlast is good, Blair Witch is good, Alien Isolation is good. None of them have been great. Um, unless we're going to talk about the Quarry or uh, the other one,
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn. Yeah, if we're going to talk about those are great, but for different reasons, not because they're scary.
It is a
Um,
different reason. I love those games too. I love them. Um, but they are it's a different response. You're more enjoying the story and the story choices instead of the actual fear.
all right, you're number 7,
Mhm.
Civilization 4. There's been 2 games that have come out since it, 5 and 6, all building on the stuff from the previous games. Why is 4 on your list and not 5 or 6 when 5 or 6 has all the same stuff, just better?
I don't think it's better. I think Civ 4 is actually the most balanced game. Um, there's also a bias here because Civ 4 is by far the one I've played the most, without a doubt. But the ways in which you can win feel more balanced to me in Civ 4 than they do in Civ 5 and 6, particularly when it comes to more warlike ways of winning. In the other ones, it I guess it's called civilization, but It's aiming more to be civilized. I don't think that's the only way to win. In Civ 4, you can do that. That's a possibility. You can go to war. You can win religiously. You can. There's a lot of different options there that I think are more shifted as they go further and further into the series. This is one where I'm heavily in the minority. I think there's a lot of people who like Civ 4 more than 5. I don't know a lot of people who like Civ 4 more than 6.
So if that's the case, why is like Total War not on your list when that one does incorporate that kind of winning?
I like Total War a lot. I just haven't played it nearly as much as Civ. I've just played Civ more. That's really what
Okay,
it is.
fair enough. I don't like Civ. I think it's a slow game. Um, all those micromanagey games that aren't really that engaging. Uh, I can't get into. Um, there's so many rules, so many things, and not a lot of stuff actually like feeling like they're happening. Um, what do you say to that kind of criticism?
I enjoy the slow pace of it at times. Slay the Spire, Grim Dawn, that kind of thing. They're pretty action packed, go games. I even thought about adding Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 because I played the crap out of that game and I loved it. Um, but sometimes it's nice to just slow down, make each action count, and take the time to think about the actions that you want to make, the moves you want to take, the ways you want to outmaneuver an opponent, that kind of thing. I like the slow aspect of it at times.
All right. I mean, for me, uh, a lot of people love Civ for the same reason I love Total War, and that is the just one more turn. For
Yeah,
me,
for sure.
Civ is just so much slower that one more turn doesn't get you anything. Um, like you're
So it
like, I'm
doesn't
gonna
feel as
research this
satisfying.
thing. You get to wait 45 turns. Yippee! Whereas Total War Warhammer, I'm like, I have an army in my area. I have to build an army within the next 3 turns, or he's gonna be at my base or whatever, So it really has that
It
engaging.
has a
Oh,
little
one
bit
more turn.
more.
Oh, one more turn. Oh, one more turn. Um, but yeah. Okay, Baldur's Gate 3. I am unaware if you have completed it or not.
I have completed it. I started a second playthrough where actually I've played a little bit with you. We talked about that earlier. I've completed it once, and then I'm going to do an evil playthrough too. I'm not very far in my evil playthrough, but that is something I'm going to do next. I think it is an absolutely brilliant game. The little nuances and things that they thought of with character interactions and world interactions, the amount of videos that I've watched where people try to break things, but for some reason it just works in this world and they thought of it is mind blowing. It's just almost miraculous how amazing this game is.
I know you're a big defender of Divinity Original Sin 2.
I
You've
am.
definitely put more hours into that game. Why did Baldur's Gate 3 make your list and Divinity did not?
I really love Divinity. I think the story of Divinity is absolutely brilliant. I also recognize some of the weaknesses. The combat is not nearly as balanced as it is in Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3, it's hard, but there are times in Divinity where it is impossibly hard just for being impossibly hard, or simple for just being simple. There's a lot of conveniences in that game, and what makes me love that game really is the characters and the story, because I think both of those are fantastically done. The combat brings it down quite a bit for me.
All right, fair enough. Why don't you give us your number 5?
All right. My number five is Mass Effect 2.
Okay,
Do you want
just
me to
five.
go five through just
Just
five? Okay.
five. What puts Mass Effect 2 above Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 3, uh, whatever the Dragon one is called? I can't think
Dragon
of it.
Age Origins.
Dragon Age, KOTOR 2, uh, all of the other similar kind of games. Why does Mass Effect 2 get your number 5 spot?
Because it's just so freaking epic. Um, the storyline is this mass space adventure, and the way that the story ends is such a grand scale, epic, hurrah, last adventure, final boss fight. It's my favorite final boss fight, end of a game ever, and it draws you into the to every aspect of the story. They changed when it originally came out. They changed the combat system a little bit from the first one to the second one, and I think they improved on basically everything. The combat is better, the story is better, the voice acting is better, the characters are better. The characters that you bring with you, you have more connection with, and it adds a lot of intrigue to the whole storyline. I think the travel system was improved. The first game has some problems. I really enjoy it still, but it has some problems that they corrected and made better in the second game, along with the fact that you feel so epic, you feel like a hero, your adventure is intriguing, it draws you in. It was one of the games that really made me love fantasy and love this idea of exploring bigger worlds and weirdly getting into reading. Um, because it is just so well written and so grand.
Okay. My number 5 is Zelda Ocarina of Time. I don't
Okay.
think we need to really talk about why this game is so great. It is just great. Uh,
So I want to ask a question about this one.
okay,
Um, I know a lot of people who are younger generations who have never ever played this game. If and they've heard how great it is, do you still think it holds up
absolutely. Yeah,
for a younger generation? Okay.
yeah. It's, I mean, yeah, the graphics are outdated, and yeah, you have to play it on a Nintendo 64 or through Nintendo's emulator. Um, but the puzzles are still great. The story is still fantastic. Um, I would argue that this is the most impactful Zelda game in its kind of like overall plot, as this is the divergence in the storylines. Um, not that that really matters when it comes to Zelda, but it's still kind of like a part of its identity. Um, it's the first Zelda game I played. It's the first Zelda game I beat. It's I have a memory of playing this game, getting stuck in Jabba Jabba's gut, not knowing what to do, calling my friend Zach on the phone and saying, "Hey, this is where I'm at. I'm stuck," and him being able to tell me over the phone without skipping a beat, "Go into this room, smash the middle bottle. You'll get a fairy, so have a jar ready. Then go back out of it and drop through the hole, and you'll be in the next area, and you'll be able to go to the next spot." And so yeah, I just have that unique connection of having this connection with a friend when we were like, I don't know, 8, 10, something like that. Um, and just getting really engrossed in this world. I grew up on the Nintendo 64 and the original Xbox. I never got into Super Mario 64. I never got into um, Super Smash Bros. Or Mario Kart or any of those games. Didn't even own Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros. Or Mario Party. Uh, I didn't own Zelda either. I borrowed it from this friend. Um,
Wow.
and this is the one that was like, man, story games are great. Uh, you can get enthralled by this story of this world that's being created, and I think that that's just amazing. And so that's why that's my number 5. At number
Very cool.
4, I have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
It's just the best Zelda game of all time. Took everything Breath of the Wild did and improved upon it. Um, and just reintroduced me to that feeling of getting engrossed in this world.
Okay. So I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom yet. I did play Breath of the Wild. Why? I honestly still think Ocarina of Time would probably be my top Zelda game. What inches out Ocarina for you?
It's newer, it's bigger, it's you play more of it. There's a lot more to enjoy. There's a lot more creativity, and there's honestly a lot more replayability.
Okay,
That's it.
that's fair. It's at least its previous game was a fantastic game, a great experience. Around, it made you want to explore because of all of the wonderful little things that they hid throughout the map. The dungeons were wonderful, a ton of fun, and from everything that I've heard, Tears of the Kingdom just does all of that better.
Yep. Plus, gives you the creativity and building mechanics and powers that are a lot more interesting. So, yeah.
Cool.
What's your number
My
4?
number 4 is Left 4 Dead. Um,
So, a
I
lot of
have
people love
played.
the second one more than the first.
Yeah, I don't. I think the aspect of the witch is one of the most interesting parts of Left 4 Dead. And I think the witch walking around the way that she does in Left 4 Dead 2 actually is a major, major drawback that people don't talk about enough. They also toned down her power level significantly, so she didn't feel like as big of a threat. I like the idea that she's hiding in some corner and you hear that crying witch and you're like, where the hell is she? Where is she at? And when she's walking around, she's easier to spot, and that sense of fear from the game I feel like doesn't doesn't translate as well. um it to me is a major downside of the second one. There's a lot of great parts of the second one, but I don't think it's quite as well balanced. I like the undead, the different special undead from the first one a little bit better, and the witch is a massive, massive, massive downgrade in the second one to me.
So, is that the big difference maker for you? Is just the witch, nothing else?
The largest difference maker. I also liked that in the first one, um, I feel like the players are designed to win more. In the second one, the specials are more powerful. And if you're playing something like a four versus four, where you have four specials and then you have four people, the people are still probably going to win that one. In the second game, in my experience, a four versus four, the infected are most likely going to win. And I like the aspect of people surviving. Maybe that's just a me thing. It's just a balancing act that works better for me.
Fair enough.
What
Your
is your
number.
number 3?
My number 3 is Knights of the Old Republic. Uh,
Okay.
Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. Great story, biggest twist game for me, with a twist plot wise. One that I never saw coming, one that I go back to and play all the time. Fantastic game, still playable to this day. You and I have had this conversation. I think that if I were to remake it, if I were the person in charge of the remake that they're making, um, that's essentially all I would change would just be mechanics. Because other than that, throwing a fresh coat of paint on it, you're good to go. It's great. So, um, Yeah.
That will be on my list, and I'll ask you some questions. We can talk back and forth about it in a second. My number 3 is Bloodborne. Um, I enjoy some of the fighting games, but I'm not as good at them as some other people. Bloodborne is different to me. The mechanics work better for me. I love the atmosphere. I love the lore. If you dig into it, we I played this game because of you, and it's a special game. When you try other games like Dark Souls or Sekiro or any of the other ones, there's a lot of them. Um, they don't translate the atmosphere quite as well to me. I don't like the move set quite as well. It's just almost a perfect fighting game. I highly enjoy it. I enjoy how challenging it is. You get to that Orphan of Kos at the very end of the game, and he is such a little bitch. I fought him. I don't even know how many times. Probably hundreds of times before I finally beat him. And I think there was a little bit of luck to that, to be completely honest. He's just so freaking hard, but it's a challenge that you actually want to fight. Yeah, you get frustrated, but you'll throw down your controller, and then 3 weeks later you're like, no, I'm gonna beat him. I know I'm gonna beat him, and then you go try it another 40 times, and you get wrecked 40 times, and then you throw it down and you come back anyway because there's something addictive and satisfying about this game in a way that a lot of these others just haven't been for me.
So I'm surprised that this made it this high on your list. And a little surprised it made it on your list at all. Um,
Me
if
too,
I were
actually.
to have predicted your list, I would have put this, like, if I'd known it was going to be on your list or near your list, I would have predicted like 9, 10, realistically, like around the 15 mark. Why is this so high on your list? This is your number 3 of all time. What put it that high for you?
I was surprised too. And when we get to my number 1, I was actually completely shocked because I changed something that I have believed since I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7, whenever my number 2 came out. Um, Part of it was playing with you. Like, it was a really good experience for me going back and forth and trying to get through the game, and there was a boss. There's 3 guys that I got completely stuck at, and I'll be completely honest, Josh got me through it. I eventually went back and killed them because I was so pissed that I couldn't beat it. But um, it was a cool challenge rating. It was unlike any game that I'd really played before. Like, I had played God of War, that kind of thing, but that's not the same as one of these really challenging combat focused games. It was a really unique experience for me. It's something that stuck with me. There's a lot of aspects of that game that are part of my mind in a way that other games just aren't. A lot of these horror aspects, I love horror. And the more that I thought about this game, the more I kind of think I didn't give it enough credit, to be completely honest, in my head. And then when I was making this list, this was probably the list that I struggled with the most. I decided to replay parts of it again, and I marveled at how good the game still feels. Everything about it just feels good. The sound design is fantastic in this game. I love hearing the little screams and echoes in the world that's around you. It makes the world that's honestly pretty small feel super fleshed out. I love digging into the lore. I think it's really interesting. It's just a good game. That's unlike, to me, anything else. I don't even think other FromSoft games are really like Bloodborne. They caught magic with this game in a way that I don't think they have again.
That's fair enough. Why don't you give us your number 2?
Okay, number 2. And this was the game that I have said is my favorite game since I was like, I don't know when it came, 6, 7 years old. I played it when it first came out. It blew my mind, and that's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I love the characters in this game. I love the twist. The twist. blew me away. Um, I loved the combat style for a really long time. I loved how you felt like such a badass Jedi. I love each of the worlds that you get to explore and all of these little side quests that they added into the game. I love the little arcade um, shooter game as you're traveling through space. I I love the way that they handle the twist. I love the ending. I love the fact that you can be good or bad. One of my negatives to the game is I think it does push you more towards being good and the bad side isn't as well written, but it's still very, very satisfying. It's, to me, an absolutely wonderful game. And the only reason that I don't have it as my number one anymore is because of the mechanics. You brought that up. And when I was deciding how I wanted to structure this list, I really had to think about it. Because I've, for, I don't know, 20 years, played this game once a year, every year. I
That's a lot
basically
of
have
play.
it mastered. I absolutely smash the end boss of this game. Um, I know exactly how to play it, but that doesn't mean the mechanics are really great. They've fallen behind and they're old. And when they do a remake, I hope that they're able to upgrade these mechanics in a way that feels satisfying, um, in a way that feels like there's different levels of challenge. I also actually would like for them to expand the dark side of things a little bit because I don't think it's as strong on that side of things. Um, and that dropped it from number one for me.
That's fair enough. You said you had some questions, some stuff you wanted to talk about with it. What is, what's your question?
What are the mechanics that you would like to see changed, and how would you like to see them changed?
Oh, I would take away the turn-based combat
Okay.
entirely. I am
What
not a
if
big fan of turn-based combat when it comes to third-person or first-person games. I just think it's really rough. Honestly, with KOTOR, you don't even need to do it. You can just use the basic attack all the way through the entire game and never do anything with it. So there's not a real benefit for it. It's not like it's a duel and you have to think about each strike very specifically. You can just kind of like, okay, press play, unpause, go, do your thing. Doesn't really matter. Um, I would I would make it exactly like the way Star Wars is going, Fallen Order um, style, uh, FromSoft style game, where
Okay.
you have your rest points and your checkpoints that you're trying to get through. Combat is challenging. Um, I would make it a little bit more in depth than what those games have done so far, and kind of lean even further into the FromSoft way of doing it. But uh, yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I think needs to happen. Because if to
So,
me, if you had Kotor with just really engaging Bloodborne combat, you would have a phenomenal game that you could play for forever, right? You could do different builds, use different weapons, use different force powers, all of the things that would get you going back to playing that game.
that'd be very cool. So, Baldur's Gate 3 is on both of our lists. It's a fantastic game. Would you prefer if Baldur's Gate 3 was not turn based and was more of this style of game that we're talking about?
Um, I mean, no, I'm happy with it the way that it is. My downside for it was that some of those turns can take quite a while, but there is a lot more weight to those combats. They are more like a duel, and each move and how you spend each of your actions do matter a little bit more. Um, if you're fighting the hag, for example, taking the time to know which hag is the real hag and what her weaknesses are and how to exploit those weaknesses are uh, very, very impactful. Like, I don't mind taking that time on my turn when the turns matter. Um, Whereas with KOTOR, like I said, you don't even have to choose to make an attack. You could let it do the basic attack through 95% of the game, if not the entire game. Um, so those choices don't matter. Whereas in Baldur's Gate 3, when you enter combat, you're like, oh crap, what do I do? How do I do this? I have a build that's for strength. Maybe I can pick up the hag and throw her into that pit. Or I have, you know, I happen to have a spell that does fire damage, which she's weak to, or whatever she's actually weak to. I don't even remember, but those choices do matter, and you feel like they matter. You feel like I can't waste my turn, or I might not get another turn. I better set up my friend. I better set up my other party member. You can kind of chain those together too, where you're like, oh, I'm going to do a stunning attack so that when Will hits her with um, Eldritch Blast, it's going to knock her further, or it's going to do that extra damage. So that's why that's a little bit different. It's also top down instead of third person or first person. So I don't mind that turn anyway. And with
Okay.
the turns that the enemies are taking, you can just get up and walk away from it. You don't even need to sit and watch it because you can't do anything about it anyway.
Interesting. I like the turn-based thing, and honestly, if I was in charge of a Knights of the Old Republic remake, I would do more of a Baldur's Gate 3 turn-based aspect. And we're not really here yet, but I think it'd be really cool if we had an AI that was in charge of the interactions on the other side. So you have someone who is constantly changing to whatever strategies that you are using and enacting different ways to beat you so that you have to be different to be able to beat further enemies along the line. If you could incorporate something like that into a Star Wars Knights, it would be absolutely phenomenal. And if I were in charge of the design, that is what I personally would do.
I I don't think I would. Um, I'm not saying that that's a bad direction to go into, but like I used to play D&D, and I would spend the time between turns thinking about what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And that is the fantasy of D&D, and that's what Baldur's Gate is built on.
Okay.
Um, the fantasy for Star Wars is being a badass laser sword wielding, force using, right? You want to walk in, you want to block some laser bolts, you want to stab some things, cut things in half, cut through a wall or whatever. You want to be more John Wick. You want to be more, you know, quick and agile and in there. You don't want to be slow and methodical and all those kinds of things. That's not the fantasy of being a Jedi or a Sith. So that's why I think I would lean a lot more into the faster paced kind of mechanics.
Why do you think the D&D version of Star Wars is as popular as it is?
I don't think it's super popular,
I thought it was.
but it may be. I tried playing it once. It wasn't really mechanically good.
Okay.
It's a lot to be desired in terms of mechanics and stuff. Um, I think people like being in the Star Wars world and have a big connection to it and like feeling connected to it. But its weakness for sure is slow.
Okay.
And when
I
I'm
think
playing a
that's
video game, that's different than sitting around with your buddies pretending, because just going isn't an option in that scenario.
fair enough. Why is, because we both absolutely love this game. We'll go to your number two, but why is Knights of the Old Republic It used to be your favorite game, correct?
I would go back and forth depending on
Okay.
the day between Knights of the Old Republic and Ocarina of Time growing up.
All right. What dropped it below? Let's go to your number two.
Ghosts of Tsushima. Um, what dropped Knights of the Republic below Ghosts is the fact that I'm no longer a Star Wars fan. I don't
Okay.
consider myself a Star Wars fan. I'm not buying into Star Wars anymore. I'm not going to watch any of the shows. It would be very difficult to get me to play any of the games. Um,
But didn't you really enjoy the last one that just came out? Um,
uh,
Jedi Fallen Order, is that the newest one?
I don't remember. It's the second one in that franchise. I'm not sure if Fallen
Yeah.
Order is the first one or the second one. Yes, I did love that game. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Very excited to play through it a second time. Um, very great. Uh, what about it? Like,
So just what made when you're not a Star Wars fan anymore, we talked about that in one of our other episodes, but what made that game an exception when you're not a Star Wars fan, you don't want to buy into it anymore, you don't want to play the games. Why was there an exception there?
that was before I was done. I was
Oh,
a
really?
Star Wars fan up until the last episode of Ahsoka.
Okay, okay. And
Right?
if Knights of the Old Republic gets remade and I play it and I say it's great, are you interested at that point or are you still like it's Star Wars? Eh.
I'm interested in the remake regardless.
Okay,
Right? Like, I am not going to sit here and be like all Star Wars bad no matter what. Um,
okay.
there's just degrees to it, right? So, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, one of my top games of all time. I've always wanted it to be remade pretty much since Skyrim. Um, like, finally getting that after, I don't know, 13 years, that's really cool. That's amazing. I think that the new one, Jedi Outlaws, looks phenomenal. And the only thing stopping me from playing that game is the pay of it, the Ubisoftness of it, in terms of
Yeah, me too.
finances. Um, I think it looks like a good story and a good world, and honestly, the reviews are not that great for it either. Um, but I think with a little adjustment in, not trying to get everybody to subscribe to your terrible service, it would be very great to get into, and at least try that game. But all of these other Star Wars games that are coming out, they're not that way. Um, they do things that just aren't my cup of tea or my type of thing, or I think will be good in any way. So um, there's that, and in terms of Star Wars games, I've been let down a little bit. Um,
Okay.
the Battlefront games were a letdown for me, and I know some people will be like, "But they fixed them and made them better." Not better enough. Not what I wanted them to be, and not that old feeling of playing on my PS2. That's what I wanted. Um, the new Lego Star Wars was a letdown. Um, like, it
I,
had
I
everything it needed.
I thought you really enjoyed that game.
I enjoyed everything but about how short it was.
Okay.
They did all 9 movies in it and compressed all 9 movies. Each movie got 4 levels to it, and each level can be beaten in about 20 minutes.
Oh, that's really short.
Yeah, so they cut out just a ton of great Star Wars content, and So, like, a lot of things that I was looking forward to playing in the Lego world, I didn't get to even see, or was in a short cutscene that they kind of glanced over, or whatever, you know? So,
So
it was a letdown in that kind of sense. It's still a good game, but
so that makes sense to me. Star Wars has let me down a lot too, but Star Wars Knights being such a different time period feels very separate from the Star Wars universe that gets replayed over and over again and that Disney has largely ruined. So is it just the disappointment from other Star Wars that's bleeding into this? Why does it affect this game in that way? If that makes sense.
it does, and it's because it's still Star Wars. Um,
Okay.
like I said, Star Wars games have let me down a little bit. Star Wars shows have let me down pretty hard. Star Wars movies have destroyed any hope I have in Star Wars. So, like, it's still Star Wars. That, I can't even go back and watch A New Hope and feel that childlike magic again, which I used to be able to do before The Last Jedi, right? It's Star Wars. Plain and simple. It's still the universe, it's still how it works. It's like
It's
I
just
don't
all
even
tainted.
care. I don't feel like, oh man, it'd be so cool to be a Jedi, or what color of lightsaber would you have, Because it doesn't mean anything anymore, you know? Even though the story itself is kind of more isolated, even though there's a lot of lore and things that leads directly from Revan to the Skywalkers. Um, Outside of that, they're pretty much alone. But all of those mechanics and things and Star Wars things that I loved in the way the universe worked are still ruined. They're still worthless. They've still been tainted.
That's fair. If I'm being honest, me marking it down for my number one probably is slightly influenced by that. I think it's slight, but it's hard to not have the disappointment that Star Wars has become not bleed into everything Star Wars, everything that you loved, everything that was magic to you growing up. Um, Even like we'll go into our top shows here. I think it's next week, but Rebels is one of my top shows, and even that one just doesn't have as much flavor anymore because of the distaste that a lot of Star Wars has become. Unfortunately, I can get where you're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I do have one exception, and that is books. Um, but that's because that's just a very different experience. It's not visual to me in any way. So,
Okay.
like, Star Wars, Shadow, whatever, um, narrated by the guy who voices Maul in Rebels and Clone Wars, is still a fantastic book, and I love it. And the Thrawn books, um, which I haven't read since Ahsoka, but the Thrawn books, when I read them, were still very loved them. Well, I loved four and a half of the nine, so half of them. Five of the nine, half of them I really enjoyed. Uh, but yeah, other than that, everything else is very, very tainted. But I still love Knights of the Old Republic. I have it on my phone. Um, I really wish that there was a stronger support in the modding community for them because, like I said, some mechanics changes and some paint touch up is all the game really needs to me. Um, but yeah, my number two, Ghost of Tsushima. Uh, wow, oh wow, is that just the most beautiful game of all time? And it doesn't get credit for that. I see lists on YouTube and whatever talking about the most graphically impressive games, and this one is like often an honorable mention or like number 10 or number 9. And I just sit there and go, how is that even possible? Um, Often at the top, we get Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 has its moments for sure. There's the misty fog in the forest as you're approaching the mansion. You have the gunfight going up the hill, absolutely. But most of the time when you're actually playing, um, it's just a game. To me, Ghost of Tsushima was everywhere you looked at any point in time. Is just gorgeous, um, and great gameplay. I love the stances. Um, if I were to do Star Wars video game, I love that stances, right? Um, I would implement that for sure into it. Um, just great. There's nothing bad about this game in any way. Story is great, little predictable, but still great. Um, love the world. There's nothing too Ubisoft about it. There's nothing too, oh, look, another fox for another headband. I will follow that fox and get that headband every single time because it's awesome. Um, it's there's nothing bad about this game. It's perfect. It's amazing for what it is. A lot of people are very excited that they announced they're making a second one. I am not as into that idea just because I feel like this is a perfectly contained, great story. I don't feel like I need to continue this story. I don't feel like I need to look at it from a different perspective. I don't feel like any of that stuff. It's just great. It's amazing. It is the second game I have ever platinumed and completed 100% of. So that's why it is number 2 for me.
Awesome. It is a wonderful game, and it is the most beautiful, beautiful game that's ever been made. Um, just calling up the wind and seeing the grass bending, just that. I sit there and I stare at it, and it's amazing. And you're right, you can just chase foxes for days. The different biomes that they have in the game are gorgeous. The snow is beautiful. It's just beautiful. And then you go over on the ocean and you watch a sunset, and the ocean is rippling, and it's gorgeous.
Yep.
The
Uh,
the action is a ton of fun. It's a great game.
yeah.
And then the end boss of that game is awesome. Like, it's such a cool boss fight. I love it.
Yeah.
That's a solid pick, man.
Uh, I loved the DLC. I still think you need to experience it. You have an OLED screen now.
I know.
Play through the DLC. It's so great. That cave sequence is to die for. Like, one of my favorite sequences of gaming of all time, if not the number one, was going through that cave section. Uh, just because of how beautiful that looks on an OLED screen. Well, for me, it wasn't an OLED screen, it was my laser projector, but amazing, fantastic, great, great, great. Do you
That's
want to just
awesome, man.
quickly read through your honorable mentions?
Yeah. Divinity of Original Sin 2, the Doom remake from I don't remember what year it was. The original Doom
16.
remake, 16. Ghosts, God of War 2014, Outlast, Dragon Age, XCOM, and Hades. You didn't write anything down, but did you have any honorable mentions at all?
Just kind of games we've brought up all the way through. Like an honorable mention to me would be Skyrim. Um,
Okay.
Honestly, surprised it fell off my list because when the Legendary Edition came out, me and my friend AJ holed up in his man cave for quite literally 5 days, eating pizza and drinking Mountain Dew, and we called it Skyrim Days, and it was amazing. Um, but yeah, uh, Skyrim for sure, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 1, um, Fable 1, um, pulling up my Steam library right now to just kind of look quickly and see if anything else. Um, Hades 2, Helldivers 2, Hell Let Loose, Wizard of Legend, Assassin's Creed 4, Halo 2, Halo 1, Halo Reach, Portals 1, 2,
That's a good one.
um, Star Wars Empire at War. Yeah, those would be my honorable mentions. Oh, what is it called? Little Nightmares 1.
Oh, that's surprising to me. I love that game, but that's surprising to me. That's cool.
It'd be an honorable mention. I'm sure I think it would make my top 25 games. Probably
That's
just
good.
barely, but yeah, it'd be up there.
I was gonna say about Ghosts. I think Ghost does the Assassin's Creed thing so much better than any Assassin's Creed that it kind of just makes Assassin's Creed like a joke to me. Um,
I don't think that that's the case at all. I think
that's
it does the
just
new
me.
Assassin's Creed thing, but that's not the way Assassin's Creed should be going. That's not the direction I would take it in. It's a
Even the old
terrible
Assassin's Creed,
direction.
like we both love Black Flag, but if I only had to pick one of those two games, I would pick Ghosts every single time. And I know you've got that ship aspect of Black Flag, it's really good, but Ghost does the assassin thing and it just does it so much better than anybody else has. It's not even close.
I didn't play Ghosts in a stealthy way, so it was. I did not even compare those two in my mind.
Oh, the entire time I was playing it, I was like, this is just better, and Assassin's Creed is screwed because this is so much better.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
Go ahead.
what
Number
is
one. Go ahead.
my
I
number
want
one?
to
All
talk
right.
about yours.
Okay, my number one, and I thought this was going to be my number two, is Outer Wilds. This game is unlike anything else I have ever played. Um, I'm usually not into the whole exploration thing. It's usually not my game type. I loved exploring this world. I loved the color palette. I love the sound choices. I love when the sound cuts out versus when it gets deeper. I love how you search through these different planets. Um, for people who haven't played this game, I don't think it gets nearly enough love, not even close. You are someone who wakes up on a planet and every 22 hours the star goes supernova and you wake up again and you're stuck in some kind of time loop and you have to figure out why the time loop is happening, um, and how to get out of it. And I loved this idea of you've got 22 hours. How are you going to use these 22 hours? And if you mess up, it's okay. But did you use your 22 hours well enough? When I think about my own life, and there's days that I just kind of wasted. I've dealt with depression for a really long time, and there's days where you just kind of lay in bed and you're depressed. And sometimes you're just dealt a hand, and sometimes it's a crappy hand. Sometimes you're going to have a sun explode in your face. But how do you use your 22 hours? And each bit of the exploration was fulfilling and uplifting and wonderful. I felt the sense of magic that you that you feel when you watch a great cartoon when you're a kid, or you discover something new that you've never experienced before. And I felt it consistently over and over and over again. This game absolutely enraptured me. I didn't sleep for days while I played it. The re- and the ending of this game is something I still think about. I still analyze, I still go over in my mind. It says a lot about what kind of life you want to live and who you want to be and what really matters in this life. And the ending spoke to me on an emotional level that a lot of other pieces of art really haven't. It's a game that makes me want to use my time better. It's a game that makes me want to weirdly love people more. It's a game that makes me want to experience the time that I've got and invest it in better ways. It's a game that left an indelible mark upon me in a way that nothing except for maybe Kotar really has. Um, I truly love this game. It Everything about it to me is beautiful, and it is the only game that I would literally change nothing about it, not a thing. And if you haven't experienced it like a lot of people have, and I tell people about this game all the time, then just give it a try. Don't look up videos on how to play this game. Don't look up videos about what it's about. Just know that it's a great adventure that can change you as a person and change the way that you view the world around you.
To me, this game is a pretty weak one. Um, I find the time loop frustrating in any game. Let's take a look at Majora's Mask. I hate that I can spend my time doing something of quality and run out of time and lose all of my progress. Bothers the crap out of me. Super hate it. On top of that, I don't find it engaging, um, mostly because I'm not a physical reader. All my books have
Fair
to be
enough.
audio books, most of them, not all of them. But I have attention issues. I have retention issues when there's nothing to go along with it. And the fact that 95% of this game is reading uh, really takes away from me personally.
Fair enough.
But
I wouldn't say 95%, but there is a large section of this game that's reading. And if you don't read the clues, you will never, ever figure out where you need to go to be able to piece all of this together. Like, you won't.
that's why
There's definitely,
95% of it is reading.
mm,
I mean, like you're doing other stuff, you are getting in the ship and exploring and going around and all that kind of stuff. But everything story wise, puzzle wise, everything as far as I'm aware, I have not beaten the game. I cannot get into it. But everything, you have to read the clues to make it make sense and to make it do what you want it to do and all those things. So,
that's very
unless
true.
you can read it and retain it, you're just kind of SOL.
And they have a map system. I don't know if you've noticed this, but they have a map system that will have your red clues available to you, and it does give you a general sense of where you should be going next, but you do have to read to be able to piece those clues together. And if you have a hard time retaining the information or a hard time reading in general, then no, I don't think this is the game for you. And I could see you why you would struggle with that. That makes complete 100% sense. If you do retain the information and you keep in your mind, okay, this clue has me going here and this clue has me going here and this clue says that I should be going this way to be able to go to where I need to go. I need to follow this sort of path. I'm trying to keep it vague. um, the game is unbelievable magic, but if you can't do that, or that's just completely frustrating to you, then I understand why this game would just be miserable. I actually
But that's
like.
why I would change it. I would add voice acting to it. I would not change anything else. Um, I would just add voice acting. I would have that little computer thing that does the translations. I would have that be like a AI voice and just have it read it. And if you're somebody who can read it and retain it, you can turn that option off or skip through it or whatever. There's no reason to slow you down with that. But for people like me, having it read to me would do so much in terms of interest and all that kind of stuff. Plus, having voice actors for everybody you're talking to would just pull me in that extra bit. I do want to say I think Outer Wilds is a top 5 visual experience in terms of graphics. It's not like the highest fidelity in graphics, but its art style is gorgeous.
It's beautiful, man. I can see where you're coming from with the voice actors, and maybe there's a bias here with me just not wanting to change anything about the game. I would probably, if it were just up to me, I would have voice acting as a turned off setting, and I would have the ability to turn it on. And if I were to add voice acting, it would be to the astronauts that you meet on your journey, because being able to talk to them in a way that isn't like old Mario or something like that would be, I could see that being beneficial. When it translates the old alien language, I think having it talk would actually kind of take away from the mystique. But I think having an option for that if somebody struggles with the reading would be a good idea, but I would not have that as the default.
Well, like I said, it can be turned on or off. Adding that third setting where it's just the other characters, I think, is a fantastic idea. Um, but yeah, that to me is where the weaknesses and where I think my struggles come from it are.
That makes complete sense. And I would love to add that in. That would be a good thing to add in for people who would struggle with that, because anything that bars someone from enjoying this wonderful, wonderful game, let's get rid of it. Let's clear that out, because it deserves to be played by, in my opinion, absolutely everyone.
Fair enough. My number one
Now,
does
yeah,
not
let's get
deserve
to
to
your
be
number one.
played by absolutely everyone. Uh, it is Bloodborne. It is a FromSoft game. It is incredibly difficult all the way through. There is not an easy fight or area about it. Um, so it's not for everyone. I'll be honest. This is not a game that I think everybody should play at least once. In fact, I don't think there is a game like that. Um, if there was, it would probably be something just like Tetris. Like, yeah, you should play some puzzle game like Tetris or Minesweeper or something. Um, but I don't really think that. But my number one, Bloodborne. Um, the reason that this is my number one, I don't think that this is the most perfect game. I do think that there are areas where it can be better. This is my number one because this game haunted me for 6 years. I bought this 2 weeks after it was released, maybe, um, right near the original release date. I didn't know about it ahead of time. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't get it day one. Um, I heard it from a friend who had already beaten it. I decided, okay, well, if this person really likes it that much, I'll buy it. I'll see what it's about. Maybe we can talk about it together or whatever. And I would play it and I would get stuck on that second boss, the first mandatory one, Father Gascoigne, and I would get frustrated and quit and say, I'm never playing this game again. But because it haunted me, every 3 to 6 months, I would get back in that game and I would try it again, and I would try it again, and I would try it again, and I would try it again. And I'd never really like dedicated myself enough to the game. I went to Snow College, and um, it was my first semester. I was dating this girl. She ended things with me in kind of a not so great way. I got really, really depressed and decided that instead of sitting and doing nothing or turning on a show and kind of zoning out like I had normally done when I was in that kind of place, I decided I was going to try Bloodborne again because I'd just been haunted by it, and dove into it. And what I did was I would play through an area and then I would pull up a YouTube video where that and follow along as they played through that area and got all the items and read the item descriptions and started to talk about the lore. And they did it in a way where every time it was happening, he wasn't just like giving everything away at the beginning. He was just like talking about it as he was discovering it with the viewers of these YouTube channels, and then I would go play through the next area and beat the next boss, and truly dedicated myself at that point in time and got all the way through it. It was the first game I ever platinumed. It was the first ever game I ever 100% completed, um, and I just fell in love with this game and have played it multiple times since. Um, I've beaten Orphan of Cost 3 times, because the first time it was just luck, and the second time was to prove I could do it, and the third time was because I was doing a full replay of it. And um, when I did it, I did another thing I had never done before. I captured my gameplay footage. Um, that was nothing. I've never been I want to remember this moment, I want to capture it, or I've never streamed or whatever. So I've always let all of those things go. But when I beat Orphan of Cost, I was like, boom, capture it, save it. That was, I feel so great about having done that thing. Um, so that's why it is my number one. I also think that just like the theme of Victorian horror style is just an underutilized thing in games. I don't think there's enough of it. I think it's just just great. Not perfect, but like I said, haunted me specifically at the very beginning of the game. You have this crazy intro. You're like, what the heck is going on? And then you get out to the first area and you climb this first ladder up to it. And when you get halfway up this ladder for the first time, you hear this blood curdling scream. And I remember pausing on that ladder and spinning my camera around, going like, what the heck is out there? And that is the moment that literally haunted me and kept me coming back to this game for 6 years. Not 6 years, 4 years.
That's amazing, man. It is a wonderful game. I said when I reviewed it that I think it kind of hit magic and as something special that FromSoft has really never captured again. Do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, 100%.
What do
Let's
you
talk
think
about
makes
the
it
other
so
big
different?
ones.
Yeah.
Dark Souls is the horror problem. It no longer surprises you after you're done with the first area, and it no longer challenges you after like the third boss. Um, if you look up lists of toughest bosses of all time, uh, very often towards the top is the Dark Souls 3 dragon. I forgot what it's called. Boss fight. Because Bloodborne was my first FromSoft experience, when I played Dark Souls 3, that was a easy as pie combat. Same with the rest of Dark Souls 3. Um, it's just more of the same, more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. Um, and doesn't really push you. Bloodborne challenges you to think differently, in the way that its mechanics work. The only thing it doesn't allow you to do is shield and heavy. Um, you can still be heavy, but you can't just use a shield. There's only one shield in the game, and it's sad. Um, uh, but you have so many other ways to play, and it challenges you to do things differently, whether you want to dodge or parry or do whatever you want to do, heavy, quick, medium, ranged, stabbing, magic, whatever it ends up being. Plus the variability of every weapon you use has two forms, um, and two play styles to it, and two attack patterns, and all that kind of stuff is very different. Whereas Dark Souls, stab, hide behind shield, stab, hide behind shield, stab, hide behind shield, um, kind of way of doing it. Um, so that's Dark Souls. Sekiro is the easiest FromSoft game of all time. because once you figure out how it works, every fight to the very end of the game is super easy to do. Uh, Bloodborne keeps challenging you in different ways, keeps introducing new bosses, three bosses, uh, big bosses, small bosses, magic bosses, all these things kind of mix it up. And then the new one, Elden Ring, uh, is very similar to Dark Souls 3 in the fact that if you got a big shield and a stabby thing, you can go fight 99% of everything in Elden Ring. Um, Plus, like, outside of that, the lore I don't think is as intriguing to me in Dark Souls and Elden Ring. I loved the lore in Sekiro, but that was a one and done game for me. I don't see myself going back to it.
Do you think that you could get tired of Bloodborne, or is Bloodborne something that you could enjoy for years and years to come, play it again and again and again?
I've already played through it all the way through 3 times. It's not like a super replayable game. It is linear. There's not a lot of deviation to it. The second time you play it, you lose that sense of, oh, wow, that's crazy how this connected back to the previous area and how this map kind of intertwines together. So yeah, I think that there is room for growth in that area. Um, it's not a perfect game in any sense. It's not. Um, it it needs improvements. Um, like I would I would go back in and touch up textures, and I would make it supportable with HDR and OLED specifically, because I think those true blacks and brighter colors would add a lot of aesthetic value to that game.
I agree.
I wouldn't cap it at 30 FPS. There's room for it to grow. It's not for everyone, um, but it was for me, and it can't. And I got into it at a very much needed time in my life, and so that's why it's my number one.
Very, very cool, man. Well, this was our episode. Thanks for sticking out with us. I know it was kind of a long one. Leave your comments of your top 10 games. We'd love to hear it, and we'd love to interact with you guys. Like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Appreciate you. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.